Thank you. Let's go live. Hello, Todd. Having Todd join us. Welcome, Todd. All right. I would like to call to order the May 19, 2020 meeting of the West Palm Beach Planning Board. Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Stephen Mans.
Present.
Todd McLeod.
Here.
Peter Pivko.
Present.
Deborah Rain.
Present.
Andres Paradello.
Present.
Mark Pateman. Let the record reflect that Mark Pateman is not present. Christopher Chase.
Here.
Todd Holtz.
Here, sorry.
All right. The next order of business is approval of the April 21, 2020 minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to review them? Any comments or amendments?
No comments.
If not, I'm looking for a motion for approval.
Make a motion for approval.
Second.
Motion and have we a second?
Second.
Second. Yeah.
All right, motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next on our agenda is the report of the planning staff.
Angela Van, Planning and Zoning Administrator. Let me share my screen here.
We have you as Elena Wooten. So
Yeah,
just
my
for the record-
computer was acting funny this afternoon and it finally gave up the ghost. So I can't do it. It's a long day, so I got to get the IT in there tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, these are the cases that have been heard. Actually, only one case that's been heard since this would have been the March planning board meeting with the city commission that's been approved.
Slideshow, Angela.
I'm getting there.
Okay, all right.
There we go. Okay.
We have an angel, we have hope. I tell you, you get the best name.
This was the Shops at the Press. This was the redo of the old Palm Beach Post site. You guys heard this case?
Yes.
I think back in February. Basically was to do the Starbucks on the property, and this was approved by the city commission by a 4-0 vote. And that's basically all the cases have been heard since your last March meeting. If you have any questions, and other wanted to note that the city is going to pull code revision case number 2002. And
Okay.
we don't need to continue. Just put it back on the agenda when we're ready.
Fair enough.
Was it approved as presented?
Say it again.
Was this project approved as presented?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Great.
Anything else? Any questions of staff?
No questions here.
Next on, and no other questions? Then next on the agenda are remarks by the chairperson, of which I have none. We then move to the declaration of ex parte communications. Let me begin by disclosing that I had a telephone conference today with Nancy Pullum concerning code revision case number 2001. I also received written comments from Kevin Lawler and from Bob Morrell, and both those have also been submitted to the clerk. I believe they're going to be read into the record. None of those things or anything I discussed with Ms. Pullum will prevent me from making any decision tonight solely upon the evidence presented at this meeting. Does anyone else have anything to disclose?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I too would like to disclose that I had an ex parte communication consisting of a telephone call yesterday with Nancy Pullum. However, nothing in that conversation will affect my ability to make any decision today in code revision case 20-01, except based on the testimony and evidence brought before us at this meeting.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to disclose? All right, we then move into the public hearing portion of our meeting and the swearing in of speakers. Would anyone who plans to speak or offer testimony this evening, please raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be truthful?
Steve, I thought we were going to do it on individual cases.
Okay.
It's the applicants for the first case may not be on, so they won't get sworn in.
That's fine. We just completed this. As people log on, we will swear them in at the appropriate time.
Okay.
All right. Next on the agenda are continued cases, of which there are none. That will then bring us to Planning Board Case Number 692V. And may we hear from the applicant?
My name is George Beffler. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Homer Bonner in Miami, Florida. I am here representing the owner of a property located at Lot 6, 7, and 8, Congress Crossing subdivision. I'm not sure this is the number being called. Mr. Chairman, will you please confirm?
I lost the thread of the conversation. Could you read?
You're fine. We can hear you, sir.
Okay. Alana, if I may, can you confirm whether this is the case number that our case number has been called?
Yes.
We are requesting a waiver of the usage limitations under Ordinance 4146-08 for 3 lots at Congress Crossing subdivision.
All right. Do you wish to make a presentation, sir? Or if not, we'll bring it to staff and let them complete.
I'd like to make a presentation if I may.
Okay.
Okay. First, I appreciate everybody's being here this evening, and I'm glad to see that everybody is healthy. That's a very good thing these days. Although my name appears as Renee Data on the Zoom, as you can see, there's another Renee Data somewhere here, and my name is George Beffler, and the other gentleman is the real Renee Data. I wanted to clarify that.
All right.
I believe you can click somewhere in the corner there and change it if you ever wish to do so.
Let me see. Let me try that.
you go.
Yeah, there you go. I'm George. There you go.
Okay.
That's
Nice.
okay. All right. Guilty as charged. All right. Our request involves the waiver of a usage limitation under Ordinance number 414608. It involves 3 lots, lots 6, 7, and 8 of Congress Crossing subdivision, commercial plan development. And what we're asking the committee to do is to just simply remove 3 sets of restrictions in the ordinance that only affect our property. They do not affect any of the neighboring properties, and they have all the neighboring properties have now been developed, and it has really hampered our ability to develop this property. It remains undeveloped for many years, and we're asking for relief so we can do something nice, something useful that will look good in the neighborhood. For the record, the address of the property is 4440 Beacon Circle. And the owner of the property is BML Global Ltd. That is a Florida limited partnership. And we have for years attempted to secure tenants for the property, but because we have a significant impediment with the restrictions, we're not allowed to have either governmental, institutional, medical. We cannot really secure tenants. We were successful in getting a site approval in 2009 at significant expense, and we spent a lot of money and we marketed for tenants, and we couldn't sign up a single tenant. So what we're asking today is for a major use change. What we're asking is that the approvals of medical and dental office, governmental institutional use, and recreation, entertainment, hospitality be permitted on our property. For some reason that we don't understand, we are the only property in the entire subdivision that has these restrictions. And although we have tried to understand why, what was the genesis of those restrictions, we still don't know. And whatever they were back when they were implemented in the 1980s, we think those reasons, whatever they might have been, are no longer applicable. So our request is very simple, is to remove those restrictions. We believe that that would enable us to do something nice with the property, develop it and add some medical offices, perhaps some institutional use, something that would accommodate the neighborhood, the residents, and us. And that's the purpose for being here tonight. So we respectfully request that our application be granted.
All right, any questions of the applicant? And if not, I think Ms. Wooten, you're the one who's going to be responding on behalf of the staff, please. I think you have the perfect background.
I have a-
All the
I have a
ones I've
question
seen,
actually
it's
for
very
the-
nice.
I have a question
sorry,
for
go
you.
ahead, Andre.
So were these restrictions always connected to this property, or is this something that was altered once the client or your client purchased the property? Do you know?
Yeah, the restrictions were always there.
Okay.
And we don't understand. I have asked the question and I've tried to investigate why we were treated differently from the neighbors, and we don't know why, and we don't see any reason why they should be there.
When you say neighbors, you're not talking about actual homes. You're talking about other commercial properties.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. That's all I
Any
have.
other questions of the applicant? And if not, we'll go back to Ms. Wooten, who comes in and out, I guess sharing the screen with.
I'm sharing and we're trying to have social distancing. at
That's
the
right.
same time. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Elena Wooten, and I'm representing planning staff in this case number 692V. It's a major amendment for the Congress Crossings Commercial Plan Development at 4400 Beacon Circle. This is the subject property. It's located in the Congress Crossings Commercial Plan Development. That is the zoning, CPD. The subject property is about 3.5 acres, and the future land use is commercial. The current uses in the area are commercial, business, and medical offices. The surrounding uses are commercial, business, and medical offices as well. This is a survey of the property showing lots 6, 7, and 8. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay, just a little background. This CPT is located at the corner of Congress Avenue and 45th Street. The site, as we mentioned before, or as the applicant mentioned, evolved through a series of amendments over the past several years to include business, medical offices, and commercial uses. The 3.5 acre subject site that we're talking about is currently vacant, and it consists of lots 6, 7, and 8 combined. On January the 9th in 1984, the City Commission adopted Ordinance 1762-84, which established the Congress Crossings CPD. It's been amended from time to time. The adopting ordinance, of course, established development regulations for the CPD, including building placement, landscaping, uses, etc. The reason why we're here today is that the applicant is proposing to amend Ordinance 414608 and the Declaration of Covenants and Restrictions for Congress Crossings to permit the following. They want to lift the restrictions from 6, 7, and 8, the lots for medical and dental offices, also for government offices, and also for government and institutional uses, which would be limited to hospitals, healthcare, and rehabilitation facilities. They're also requesting to lift the restrictions on lots 6 and 7 for indoor recreational facilities, which would be limited to private indoor recreational facilities like indoor tennis. I do want to state that the proposed uses that the applicant is requesting to change or lift for lots 6, 7, and 8 are already permitted on the majority of the other lots that are within the CPD. Staff finds that this request complies with the amendment standards in section 9432 of the zoning and land development regulations, and staff recommends approval of case 692B. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you
All
have.
right, any questions of Ms. Wooten?
I guess I have a question. I can see that you're recommending approval, but I'm just kind of curious. Can you explain why there was that restriction in the past and what made you think that it was unnecessary in this case?
Well, I'll pull Angela in to talk about the history because she's been here. But I'm not sure why there were restrictions, but I'll pull her in. Maybe she has some insight.
I think this one even predates me. This PD predates me, but I think the main issue with this property, and if you saw about the site plan, it sits back in the back. It was back in the back of the Embarcadero Drive, the Congress complex. And you do have some residential. I mean, it's not in the city of West Palm Beach. It's in town of Magnolia Park. So it's just what the developer did at the time. I don't know if these were in the block. They've never been developed. No building is on them. Most of the other lots came with buildings that's been there for a while. So I'm not sure to say that's what the developer came in. That's what he proposed. That's how he did it. So maybe he had uses for the other lots when he came in, and that's how he wrote it up. But staff can't answer that one. I do not know personally why it was done that way.
Mr. Chair, if I may add, Mr. Chair, generally what happens when somebody adopts a commercial plan development, they simply reference the underlying uses of that zoning district, whether it's general commercial, neighborhood commercial. Back in the 80s, quite a bit, a lot of times when the plan developments came in, they would identify a list of uses that they would want for each of the parcels. That system is somewhat antiquated. We don't see it as much anymore. But if there was a concern about a particular use or developer at the time didn't have any interest in pursuing that use, then a lot of times they would simply omit it from the list of permitted uses. In this case, it was 36 years ago. I actually was here at the time. I don't remember exactly why this was done.
Okay.
But a lot of times, again, they'll just specify
spending a
the
moment
uses.
on that ancient history. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I had a similar question, Chris. I'm glad you raised it. By the way, may I ask, do any of the neighboring properties object to this? Do we know? We're not aware of any objection.
Elena, we didn't get any letters that I'm aware of, did we? Okay.
No
I mean,
objection.
is there any use that's qualitatively different than what's already allowable now?
No, all of the uses that they're asking are already permitted in other
Right.
lots already in the CPD.
All right, thank you. Any other questions of staff?
I appreciate your effort of matching the shirt with your background.
Oh, I knew. Thank you. I didn't plan it, but it was awesome.
You beat me to the punch, Peter.
All right, any
I
other
do have a
questions of
question,
staff?
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry.
Do these restrictions that are on these 3 lots, did those same restrictions exist on the other lots in that subdivision that were permitted later on in life? Or is this just a abnormality with these 3 lots?
Let me just make sure I'm understanding the question. Are you asking if there are other lots that have come in before to lift
Yeah, in
restrictions?
the same subdivision, because there's, several other lots in this same area.
I'm not aware of them, but I'm
Okay.
going to get Angela. Hold on.
Angela Van again. Most of the lots that have come in is actually added restrictions per se, added uses again to it. Like this lot, somebody came in, when they added something for a radio station, we added a couple more uses for other lots. But yes, they have come in and add not necessarily these particular type uses, but yes, other lots have come in. When Walgreens was actually part of the PD, we had to do a major amendment for the Walgreens to be a part of the actual Congress Crossing PD. So yes, other lots have come in for other uses.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? And if not, we'll bring it back to the board. Does anyone have any objection to this request?
No, I think the medical makes a lot of sense. You have JFK North just around the corner, and I have personally 2 doctors in this area, so that's
There we
becoming,
go.
a very
Yeah,
heavy
agree before
medical
you-
center.
I totally agree with Peter.
Yeah.
I didn't say psychiatrist, did I?
I mean, I think it's telling, I think it's telling that we're struggling to articulate a reason why these restrictions were imposed in the first instance.
Correct.
And it certainly is not consistent with its present use now in the adjoining properties. So does anyone have a concern? If not, I'll look for a motion.
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman, of Planning Board Case 692V.
Have we a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Aye.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, then, we move to the code revision cases, and we understand one has been withdrawn for now. So we are proceeding with code revision case number 2001. And Ms. Van, I think you're handling this?
Yes.
Please proceed. Excuse me, Ms. Pullum, I see you're online. We can't see you, if there's
Is it over?
there's usually an icon in the bottom left corner of a camera. If you left click that, you should be able to join us
Sure.
with video. Then we can see your facial reactions if you don't approve of. There you are. We see you. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Okay, great. All right.
Who's it?
Why don't you proceed,
Who's mine?
Ms. Wooten? I mean,
One
Ms.
second.
Van.
Give me a second. Let me get my thing. 1 second.
Is that your home, Nancy, behind you?
Yes, it is. But I'm not outside in the rain.
Where is it? I didn't know. Where is it? No. Is it coming up? Yes. No, where is it? What is? Yes.
Angela, do you want me to pull it up?
You good?
Yes, she does.
Yeah, it's not coming up. I don't know what happened to it. It disappeared. It was on the flash drive a minute ago. Okay, you can put it up. Oh, let's do. What is this? It's right here. Did they say yours?
Is it up?
Yes.
Okay, there it is. All right.
Just tell me when to advance the slide. But
Okay. This is a code revision case number 20-01, which is city initiated request. You can advance it. Basically, the city has permitted planned developments in the city since about 1964. In 64, the minimum area acreage requirements was 10 acres for RPD and 5 acres for commercial plan developments and industrial plan developments. In 1980, just to give a brief history, the city commission eliminated the 5-acre minimum from for RPDs and the 2-acre minimum for CPDs. And in 87, the zoning code rewrite reestablished a minimum acreage for RPDs and CPDs. And in this rewrite, the city established a table, which is in Article 8. Rick, if you click it. This table, as you can see here, basically was supposed to be a synopsis of all of our regulations into a table. But as you can see, one more time, Rick, it basically showed that for RPDs, and this did one portion of it, but it goes down to all the multifamily and CPDs. It actually for 1 acre for RPD. So it had like 0 acres, 1 acres, and 2 acres shown in the table, which was a conflict that staff found that was not in the RPD or the plan development section. Next slide. So the city request, based on these discrepancies and other clarification issues staff has identified in the plan development session, we're requesting the following in this code revision case: to provide a better definition and intent of a PD, to make adjustments to the traffic increase threshold for PDs, and to remove the conflict in the PD acreage requirements. Next slide. The first request is the intent. The intent that staff felt the current language was ambiguous and really didn't clearly state what the city is expecting from plan developments. A lot of times staff will go in there and we would have to try to work with them to achieve what we felt that should be given for plan development. So the language that's basically underlined, you see on the screen, basically gives more specifics. As you can see, what swipe through, that's what was in the code before. And what we're adding is this language that basically make it clearer to any applicant, clear to public, to everyone, what exactly is a PD and what the city is expecting from a PD. Aesthetic pleasing living, shopping, and working environments, preserve natural amenities, et cetera. So basically, that's what we're trying to do with that. And we also just clarifying that we're reducing dimensional requirements or waiving any other criteria included. Because a lot of times, commission does waive height and setbacks. Oh, somebody got a setbacks and all. So the next one
Excuse
is,
me, I hate to interrupt, but we got something from the screen, someone asking to join the meeting. I don't know if there's someone who could assist her.
be
Ray
Jason.
Frank was her name?
Yeah, be Jason.
Okay.
Jason, you saw it?
Yep, I'm gonna bring him in now.
Thank you so much. Please continue.
The second request is for a traffic threshold requirement. The current language says that any increase in traffic impact above that established in the master plan requires a major amendment. We were getting somebody coming in just adding 200 square feet onto their retail building. It may be on it for storage, but because it generated one additional trip in traffic, we would have taken it through a major amendment for that particular change. So what staff is trying to do is to provide some language that still will limit the traffic. We're not trying to let the traffic get out of control, but give some flexibility for us and for the applicants. We have 3 thresholds now. It would have to meet 3% of the average daily traffic increase in traffic, and it says so 3% of the average daily traffic, ADT, or 100 ADT trips over the traffic for the original project, as established by the master plan approved by the city commission. This has been vetted by a traffic planner and city's traffic engineer. We feel this is allow flexibility by still making sure no project is coming in and really impacting traffic on local roads. Go ahead, Rick. Next is minimum acreage requirement. As staff talked about, 56 of the RPDs reviewed since 1987 in the city. That's when the city got rid of the minimum 5-acre requirement. 45%, which is about 25, have had the acreage waived. And of the 17 RPDs, I think it's important, east of 95, 17 basically have had the acreage waived. With all the PDs that have been built since 1987, east of 95, all of them, all the RPD have had the acreage waived. They couldn't meet the 10-acre requirement. And then for commercial, 51, commercial, industrial, office, POR, received since 1987, 31%, basically 22, have had the acreage waived for that. So based on limiting the conflict that we talked about earlier, that's in the table and in the PD regulations, and the number and the fact that staff is the majority of what we're seeing now for our new development, but basically redevelopment. And it's going to be on smaller sites, as we've seen over the past couple of years. And the map that's attached, I'm sure you have it in your staff report, it just identified 10 properties that are probably less than acre and could be for redevelopment. But again, those properties, if they come in, will probably have to be combined with other properties. So what staff is proposing is minimum area requirement. The minimum area requirement for residential plan development district should be 1 acre. And then the minimum area requirement for any commercial industrial plan development should be 2 acres. And it's important to note that 2 factors. This is not going to increase the density. It's nothing to do with the density, nothing to do with the FAR. Whatever is in the code still can't exceed 32.27 dwelling units per acre. And then you still can't exceed the FARs that's permitted in the comp plan. But it's important to note that this text amendment will eliminate the ability of the city commission to waive the minimum acreage requirement. So they no more can a residential PD come in under acre. You can't do it. And a commercial can come in under 2 acres. No waivable of that. It would have to have more than 1 acre or more than 2 acres for commercial. Next slide. Based on this, staff recommends approval of CRC case number 2001 based on the findings that the case meets all of the standards of section 9432 of the zoning and land development regulations. Staff be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
I guess I do have a question, Mr. Chairman. It's basically this question that was posed online by Ray Franks. And I don't know if anybody's answered his question, but I think it should be addressed by someone.
I haven't seen it.
If you go down to the control bar, there's a Q&A, and it comes up as a question from this individual, and I'll just read it. It says, I made an online comment on 2001. I am not aware that this very large change in our city was properly publicized to all the residents of the city, particularly during the COVID period. That's Ray Franks.
So basically, it's just a text amendment to the zoning code. Any text amendment to the zoning code.
Stephen, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Am I allowed to make a comment?
Let Angela answer
Not
this.
yet, not yet. You will have an opportunity when we open it up. Right now, we're having questions just of staff.
Okay, well, that was they referred to my online question, but I'll need it again.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll get to you. Right now, we're choosing to take this written comment to put to staff, and we'll have a chance to hear from you directly during the public comment period of this application. So, Ms. Van, can you address for us, please, the question as to whether or not this was appropriately publicized? But do
Yes,
notice.
under the existing zoning code requirements, text amendments are required because there's nobody to basically send a mail or two. So they're basically required, and it was advertised in the Palm Beach Post as required by our code. And again, it will be advertised before City Commission in the Palm Beach Post as required by our code. Anyone who wants a copy of the staff report agenda, they email us and we basically send it out to them. But those are basically the requirements for the code for a text amendment, because it specs the text. It's not a particular property, so there's nobody to send a mail or anything out to.
All right. Any other questions of staff? And if not, Hope, if you're there, forgive me, because of the screen, I can't see everyone. I think there's a way to do it. I would like to have, I think we received some comments, and I think it may be appropriate to read those in the record if you're able to do so for us.
Yes, also I've received public comment from Ray Franks, who just chimed in.
Okay, I think we were just discussing if it's the same one, but you'll have a chance to read that in the record as well.
Okay.
So my understanding is we have some from Bob Morrell, from Kevin Lawler, and also from Citizens for Concerned Growth. And we also have one from Ms. Franks as well.
Right, and we have 3 others behind her.
Okay, assuming they're not overly lengthy, let's go ahead and read them into the record.
All right. From J. Kevin Lawler, dated May 19th, the proposed text amendments for planned developments, Article 7, Special District, Section 94-207, and Article 8, Schedule of District Regulation, Section 94-241 of the Table 8-1, Residential District Schedule of District Regulations, and Section 94-243, Table 8-3, Commercial Districts Schedule of District Regulations of Chapter 94, Zoning and Land Development Regulations are timely and well-intentioned. The concepts advanced in the text amendment are commendable. Selected sections of the actual text are, however, contradictory and self-defeating as follows. Number 1, minimum required lot size. Text amendment to Section 94-207, subsection A1A states, quote, reducing dimensional requirements or waiving any other criterion included but not limited to height, setback, lot dimensions, and lot area requirements. The inclusion of lot area conflicts with Comp Plan Policy 1.7.1 does not include the text lot area, and which in turn invalidates the staff report, page number 5, attachment 1, and amendment standards 94-32, finding that the proposed amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Staff report, page number 4, which states, No residential planned development will be allowed less than 1 acre, and no commercial / office / industrial / professional office will be allowed less than 2 acres, and staff is proposing to remove the provision that allows the city commission to waive a lesser size. Bullet number 3, minimum area require. Neither section 94-207, subsection A19C2 nor D2 clearly state that there is no waiver for the minimum area required. Number 2, ambiguous / subjective language. Section 94-27, subsection 1A, the text aesthetically please is used twice. The term aesthetically pleasing is subjective. One person's aesthetically pleasing can equally be another's aesthetic nightmare. The time to review proposed plan development text amendments in advance of this meeting were limited. No public forums were available to seek comment on these proposed changes. Thus, I urge the planning board to suspend consideration of this code revision case until the planning department resolves the conflicts in the text and allows for public comment. Respectfully submitted, again, J. Kevin Lawler, Flamingo Drive, West Palm Beach.
Okay, and we're going to hear from these individuals later, but I would like to give staff the opportunity to respond to those written comments. Anything you'd like to add? He's pointing out what he believes are some inconsistencies, some errors.
I think that, again, I just got these myself, so trying to look through them and read them myself. I think one of the things about we just changed the current code for minimum required lot size. The code today, as if we can put it back up, it says relaxing or waiving of height, setback, lot dimensions, and lot area requirements are already in existing code. All staff did was put the language, take relaxing and put reducing. You got to go back to.
So Angela, is it your point that some of these changes, some of the inconsistencies he's pointing out is not part of the changes you're making?
Yeah, right there you can see he's talking about the first one was A. All we did was put reducing instead of relaxing.
Yeah.
Or waiving. We just put reducing for one word and added dimensional requirements because the commission does waive any dimensional requirements, waiving any other criteria, which they do. So we just basically spelled it out in the code. They can waive the setback, they can waive different things, but not including the height. That's already in the code. So staff, that didn't change there. We just put reducing. Spelled that out a little more.
Angela, may I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Angela, but if I'm reading this right, the underlying language, if you can go back to that slide you were just on?
2 slides ago.
2 slides, there you go. So number 1, intent. All of this underlying language here, this is all language that this is all part of the proposed amendment, correct?
Correct.
This is being added.
Correct.
So I believe the comment that was read into the record that you were responding to dealt with the fact that in this new language, you've added the term, I just saw it in here. Oh, yeah, in the 3rd line, starting with so to provide maximum opportunity for, 3rd line, application of innovative concepts of development in the creation of aesthetically pleasing living. And there's another reference to aesthetically pleasing several lines down, which are aesthetically, provide architectural and design features which are aesthetically pleasing and supporting of an enhanced quality of life. So I believe the question is there a further definition somewhere in this new amendment that defines what you mean by aesthetically pleasing, or is there some standard by which under the code anyone would be able to judge what is meant by aesthetically pleasing?
No, there's no definition.
No.
At the end of the day, it's up to the board and the city commissioner to make that determination.
Okay.
Certain things are going to continue to be subjective, as the letter indicates. We don't disagree with that. But at the end of the day, you as the board and ultimately the city commission are going to have to make the determination, is something aesthetically pleasing.
And while I have you interrupted, the point Mr. Lawler makes, and I think Ms. Pullman also makes, is there a benefit to have a further discussion or delayed consideration of this? I only raise it to get your response, not advocating for it, but I want to give you the opportunity to respond to that request.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll add that we're going to have 2 more meetings with the city commission. First and foremost, we're trying to eliminate a discrepancy that exists within our code today. That discrepancy has been used against the city in litigation in the past. We're trying to clarify it so it's pretty straightforward for everybody. We're going to have 2 additional hearings in front of the city commission. We don't see this as a major substantive change other than to clarify the inconsistency that we've been using and have had for some time now.
All right, thank you. Ms. White, if you could please read the next comment into the record.
Steve, just
any order you want.
a
Yes,
quick
go ahead,
point.
Peter.
You know, I guess you can look up a synonym for architectural or aesthetically pleasing. And, you know, the words that come to my mind is stylish or in good taste. But I think it's a terminology that I think has been used for decades. It's a catch-all.
It's something like in law, we talk about what is a reasonable standard.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
very subjective and
Yeah.
subject to many court decisions. All right, Hope, next one, please.
Okay. This comes from Citizens of Thoughtful Growth. CTG requests that the Planning Board continue consideration of the proposed PD code changes, or at the very least, first conduct a workshop before making a recommendation on the changes. The public has not had adequate opportunity to review the changes and understand their significance, and needs to be given time to analyze them and to ask questions of the staff and the Planning Board. A copy of the amendments and the staff report on them has only been available since Thursday, either to the public or to the board, giving everyone inadequate notice to effectively provide comment. The agenda for tonight's meeting was not even posted as of yesterday. In addition, this is an especially difficult time to be considering major code changes when the pandemic has seriously disrupted any public engagement or even any public attention, while critical issues of public safety and economic crises occupy the minds and energy of most citizens. On first glance, it is very apparent that the changes invite abuse of the plan development process in at least 2 ways. First, although the staff report claims that the minimum lot acreage for PDs are meant to be clarified, in fact, the new language for waivers of the land development regulations opens the way for a regulatory free-for-all, allowing waivers of any and all regulations. Second, there are no standards or guidance for waiving the development regulations for PDs. The statement of intent in section 94-207 lacks any suggestion that the intent is meant to guide the approval of waivers, even if, quote, intent is meant to be guidance. The language of the intent is so open-ended to be meaningless. Given the recent history of the city's PD's approval, it is hard not to suspect that the vague and meaningless language is actually meant to give the city unlimited discretion in approving PDs. This goes in the opposite direction of what changes should be made to the PD code. Finally, the map of potential redevelopment sites, residential under an acre, is severely misleading. Any of the property in the city is in danger of becoming a residential PD under the code. All that is needed is a residential land use and zoning district, which the city recently seems happy to oblige for any developer who requests it, and a PD approval. Any property, even if developed, can be torn down for redevelopment. Even with a 1 acre minimum, which the changes do not clearly require, as waivers still are available, the ability to waive any and all restrictions, such as setbacks, height, lot dimensions, and so forth, incentivize the continued production of higher structures that squeeze onto small sites. Without reasonable guidance and restraints on the use of PDs, the low-density historic neighborhoods along the city's waterfront continue to be in danger of overdevelopment, with new residential towers seeking to achieve economic windfalls at the expense of their neighbors.
All right, again, we'll hear from some of the authors of this, but would anyone from staff wish to respond to what you've heard?
I just think quickly, staff just want to say that all staff is doing is three things staff said. Staff is not changing what the commission can waive. They've been able to waive just about everything, which is with the exception of they can't waive density. Density is set and they can't waive FAR. But whatever the comp plan says, that's it. So, but today the commission, as you can see, you don't have on page 2 of your staff report, right now they can relax B and C. They can do committee uses, they can do height, they can do setbacks. So they've always been able to do that. Staff is not touching that. Staff is not touching that one. So we're not allowing that part. And the intent language, again, was just to provide some more guidelines. So when the staff is sitting down, we're going through with the developers, we're not sitting at the other 3 sentences that we had in there. It's always difficult to work out with the developer. So I just want to make it clear that we're not changing what the commission can do now. They still can waive just about everything with the exception of density and FAR.
Right, Mr. Green, you want to add anything?
No, other than, again, as the board knows, that we look at each case on a case-by-case basis. This eliminates a lot of the ambiguity we've had in the past, and any PD that comes in is going to have to come in, and the board with this additional language under intent is going to have to make a determinant recommendation to the city commission. It doesn't meet the standards of the plan development.
All right. Ms. White, if you could read the next one into the record.
This one comes from William Morrell, West Palm Beach. My wife and I currently live in the south end of West Palm Beach. We live on Essex Court, a quiet, narrow tree-lined dead-end street at the end of Essex Lane. Our modest home lies on a piece of property that backs up to Flagler Drive. My wife's family has lived on this property for the last 60 years. Our neighbor to the north owns contiguous lots totaling over 2 acres on which there are presently 2 homes. He is seeking to develop 8 lots on this property, all of which are accessible only from Essex Court, then onto Essex Lane. All of the current residents of Essex Lane and Essex Court strenuously object to this development as it completely destroys the present character of the street and the neighborhood and the drastic increase in density, which caused major traffic problems on our already extremely narrow streets. The changing character of this development will result in a lowering of property values to us and to our neighbors. We understand that there is before the planning board on May 19th a proposal for code revision case number 2021, allowing as little as 1 acre of land to be rezoned as a planned development. The current requirement is 10 acres. The PD zoning district would allow reducing dimensional requirements or waiving any other criterion included, but not limited to height, setback, lot dimensions, and lot area requirements. The language included, but not limited to, could mean street widths, sidewalk requirements, etc., that are normally part of a residential subdivision. Currently, the minimum lot size in single family 7 is 6,000 square feet. This equals 7.26 units an acre. This amendment would allow lots as small as 33,250 square feet, which represents what would be the maximum density of 13.4 units per acre. The code revision request contains the following language: permitting uses or a mixture of uses not normally permitted in the underlying zoning district. This creates the possibility of spot zoning multifamily uses within a single family neighborhood such as ours. He has an attachment 4, which is titled Potential Redevelopment Sites along Flagler Drive, only shows those sites under 1 acre. These sites would be prohibited under the code revision to become PDs but represent a very small number. What is not known are all the areas between 1.1 and 9.9 acres that are now possible planned development districts, not only along Flagler Drive, but anywhere there is a residential future land use designation. There is no recognition or the need to be consistent, harmonious, and compatible with existing neighborhood character. We would hope you can help us contest this plan and save the character and use of our neighborhood and the value of our properties.
Thank you. And if I could ask staff, what is your answer to his inquiry when he says, look, there's some 1 acre lots that may be joined. Are we now allowing bigger developments or planned developments
Not
on those
necessarily.
smaller acres?
Not necessarily. The project that he's talking about on Excess Court, the owner actually owned the lots. They're already owned together, and we're working with them to try to not have them come off an excess lane, to actually put a drive in off of Flagler Drive. The property is large enough that he basically can do a subdivision and can get 8 lots that meet minimum code requirements. Staff is still working with them. We request that they go back to the neighborhood and try to work out something with the neighborhood. So staff is working on that right now. But again, staff wanted to show with the 10 acres, yeah, there are properties, but again, you're not talking about more so of, we looked at more so the multifamily properties. Staff did not look at anything south of once you get Norton and Norton. And then once you get that smaller strip of land that's multifamily, but those are larger. So we stopped basically, everything we see on that map is north of and Norton. Because once you get past that, that's all single family. We did not get into the single family. All we're talking about is multifamily development, because the cost of some of this land is to try to build towers on it. So that's why we looked at the smaller lots north of and Norton, and already in multifamily, either 20 or 32 zoning districts. So that's what staff looked at. So we did not, now this was not based on.
I guess the question is, if we were to adopt these changes, how would that impact what's going on in his immediate?
But they can do it today. I mean, they can come in today and put 4 lots together and single family. It's up to, they have to rezone it to multifamily, which is a whole lot to do. And I don't think staff would recommend approve it in a single family traditional neighborhood. That's why we did not do analysis. We stayed in what we consider the multifamily areas, which is the area today that are aligned with towers today, commercial office uses today. And that's what we staff looked at in the analysis. Today, they can come in and, get 3 lots in single family 7 as they did on the south end. But again, it's a whole lot more to go through that, and staff would not recommend that, because that's truly getting into the fabric of the neighborhoods.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, as Angela referenced, there's a separate application that we're working now for an Essex Court subdivision. There was reference to that in the letter. So that's a different project that we're working on right now. Angela, I don't know if we've ever approved a planned development for a single family zoning district.
Not just the ones like in presidential. That portion of that is actually single family 7 and everything. Our PDs, large PDs. Basically, most of the stuff is Western 95.
Right.
Or on Village Boulevard. So no, most of it Western 95 or Village Boulevard.
All right, Ms. White, if you could read the next one into the record.
This one is from Ray Franks. She says, in connection with the matter, okay, she is saying she is opposed to the 10 acres lowering to 1 acre, particularly along Flagler, extremely density, which is out of character for the areas, especially residential. This is a ploy to allow more and more condos on unpermitted size lots along our waterway, totally disrupting the residential character of the area. She says, I believe you're doing this largely to allow the building of 3907 South Flagler Drive, which, as you recall, was totally opposed by commissioners last year. The mayor flippantly told the residents they were hypocrites And now I believe you wish to pull this agenda against the recommendations of the commissioners and just for the desires of developers who are not interested in the neighboring residences. Recall that testimony at the hearing proved that the developers failed to speak to the neighbors, and now with your board, you're going around all of these wishes and requirements. The plans you're suggesting are way too broad. And that's from Ray Franks.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, and I believe this is a quick answer to that. That project is actually under 1 acre. So that project she's referencing at 3907 was actually under 1 acre.
So you're saying it would not be affected by what we're doing here
No,
today?
it's
What
under
about
1
her,
acre.
what about her larger point? That, that this is just going to allow more high-rise development along Flagler Drive?
But again, you saying it's going to allow it. Again, as we've shown today, the 17 RPDs that's been approved by the city commission since 1987, largely, as you see on the map and the staff report, a lot of those are along Flagler Drive, and the commission has already waived all of that, all of those. I mean, the only one that they've denied is that one, 3907, and that one was under 1 acre. But it's not going to allow, the commission has already set precedents. They basically waived every one that's been approved. And the last one was Eric's one at, I think it's
1309. But
Yeah.
again, it's not impacting density, as she alleges in the letter, because that project was only 42 units. The Bristol, which was another one, was only 69 units. So that's not increasing density. If anything, those units have very low density, probably even some of the single-family neighborhoods have.
All right, if we could have the next item
If I
ready.
might be heard,
I mean, Ms. Franks, you'll have that opportunity when you're sworn in and we have the public comment on this application. Please proceed, Ms. White. Any other should be read into the record?
This comes from Pat Greer. As a resident of Harbor Towers, a condominium that is set between Washington and Flagler Drive, I have a keen interest in what is being pushed by way of changing our existing parameters for building. There was a push to allow a monster to be built next to us that was at first given the go and then defeated by a vote of 5-0. If these restrictions are being eased, I would like to express my heartfelt displeasure. We, the current residents, bought here with the understanding that the codes in place would offer protection from the building that was allowed in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Please do not ruin our sweet little neighborhood in the interest of a few builders who come, leave a huge mess, may or may not finish what they started, and believe that rules in place do not apply to them.
Any comment from staff?
No, it's the same comment we just had. It's the same project, 3907.
Mr. Green, your microphone is muted. I can see your lips moving, but
Sorry.
that's okay.
But to Angela's point, again, with that property being under 1 acre, 3907 South Flagler, if this ordinance was in place, they could not even submit the plan development to seek the approval that they were seeking with the city commission.
Oops.
All right, thank you. Ms. White, any others to be read in the record?
That's one,
Yes. Susie Wilkoff says, I oppose the waiver of 10 acres to 1 acre with regard to the proposed development on Flagler Drive.
All right. Any others? Is that the last one?
No, I have a few more.
Okay, go ahead, please. Keep going. We'll stop you.
This one comes from Carol Webster. I am opposed to code revision case 20-01, which would change the planned developments from 10 acres to 1. This would directly impact the development of a much too large proposed building on the site of 3907 South Flagler Drive, including setbacks and parking restrictions. Additionally, this was put forth in what appears to be the cloak of darkness. The concerned residents of this neighborhood have strongly opposed the changes of which would allow massive buildings on much too small property. I urge you to vote no on this issue.
Please continue until you've read them all.
This one comes from Jeff and Betty Landerscaper. We are residents of Harbor Towers and Condominium 3901 South Flagler Drive. We are very opposed to changing the amount of land required for an apartment building. Parking, service personnel, visitors around the development must be taken into account, as well as proximity to other structures. Huge buildings packed together too closely block sun, create wind tunnels, and destroy neighborhood ambience. Please let's try not to ruin one property by building other huge one right next door too close, without adequate parking, without adequate space. Privacy destroyed, sun blocked, views blocked. This one comes from Jill Weiss and Richard D'Elia with the same address, and they're the same almost. I'm opposed to code revision case 20-01, which would change the planned developments from 10 acres to 1. This would directly impact the development of a much too large proposed building on the site of 3907 South Flagler Drive, including setbacks and parking restrictions. Additionally, this was put forth in what appears to be in the cloak of darkness. The concerned residents of this neighborhood have strongly opposed the changes of which would allow massive buildings on much too small property. I strongly urge you to vote no on this issue. And then Richard says, I'm opposed to code revision case 20-01, which would change the planned developments from 10 acres to 1. This would directly impact the development of a much too large proposed building on the site of 3907 South Flagler Drive, including setbacks and parking restrictions. Additionally, this was put forth in what appears to be in the cloak of darkness. The concerned residents of this neighborhood have strongly opposed the changes of which would allow massive buildings on much too small property. I urge you to vote no on this issue. Richard Brown says, I'm opposed to any changes affecting our city that is done in a manner that prevents the citizens from being represented and takes our rights away. And that is it.
All right, at this point, I'm going to open up to public comment. And I will ask you, Ms. Franks, you're one we do not see. There's an icon of a camera in the bottom left-hand corner. If you left click that, you'll connect your camera. There we are, okay? And we'll begin with you. Everyone's given 3 minutes of the public comment. Before I begin, I have to, for those who may not have been sworn in yet, I would ask you to please unmute your microphones and raise your right hand if you've not been sworn in previously. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give in this proceeding will be truthful?
Yes, I do.
All right, Ms. Franks, you've been patiently waiting your turn to speak. You have the floor. Go ahead. And unfortunately, your screen's kind of frozen to us.
Okay, yeah, I don't know why.
Okay, that's all right. We can hear you at least. Go ahead.
You can hear me? Yeah, I don't know
Yes.
if my camera's working right.
Okay. I certainly can hear your dog.
Yeah, I know, I'm trying to keep them quiet.
The dog needs to be sworn in as well, but we'll do that later.
Right. I just don't think that during this particular time and with the difficulties of, having Zoom meetings and not having meetings present, this is a very far-reaching amendment. I mean, it's not just residential, it's commercial, it's citywide, it's Antique Row, it's Northwood, a lot of large area. We're not talking just about 3907 South Flagler Drive, but in that particular case, the former commissioner, Richard Riles, likened it to having an elephant on a tiny circus stool, so it wasn't just simply that it was a 1 acre or under an acre. There was more acres required for the plans that particular developer had. So I do think that I would request that you table this or give it more consideration so there could be more public comment and more, revision to this. 1 acre for, a residential project is very small. It changes it from 10 acres to 1. Commercial, it changes it back to 2. I don't know if that would be sufficient even. So all I'm saying is I'm requesting that you table this, look at it more carefully, because this is going to allow buildings and a great change in our city, as the one person was talking about Essex. If you allow the change in the size, then all the other things would be lesser standards and fall into place, and we would have more and more congestion and more building, which I don't think that's necessarily everything that we want in our city. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Ms. Franks. I will next go, I'm working my way up. Mr. Lawler, if you wish to speak, you may need to take your mute off, though.
Good evening. For the record, Kevin Lawler, 281 Flamingo Drive. Thank you for reading my written statement into the record, and also in my background. Welcome to Zermatt and the Cont Matterhorn, where I should be right now, but had to flee Switzerland. I rolled my eyes when you read my statement, only because I think it got lost in a lot of verbiage. The point is quite simple, that under Text Amendment Section 94-207A1A, reducing dimensional requirements or waiving any other criteria included but not limited to height, setback, lot dimension, and lot area requirements. The words lot area requirements conflicts with the whole intent in other language. If staff would simply remove the words lot area requirements, I think it would mirror their intent, which I commend this effort to make it a bright line that you can't go below the minimum lot area. So that was my simple point with all the little bullets that went with it. But I think that it can be resolved fairly simply. I agree with CTG's general description about standards and applying this particularly on residential, but I commend the planning department staff for bringing forward and a set of minimum requirements that can't be waived. Right now, it's simply a free-for-all. And it becomes a beauty contest in my mind of whether you can convince staff whether it's aesthetically pleasing and meets these standards. But my main objection would be resolved if you simply remove the words lot area from the text in section 94-207A1A, and it wouldn't be in conflict with everything else I said.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you, sir. I want to keep saying Ms. Wooten, but I mean Ms. Van. Do you understand what he's requesting? Is that something you concur with, or you're not obliged to answer now? I just want to give you the opportunity if you wish to do so. Your mute's on, so we can't hear you. Angela, your mute's on.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I understand what he's saying, and again, I'll go look back at and look it with discuss with Rick. But again, lot dimensions and lot area requirements, it would not change. That's always been in there. But we'll take a look at it.
All right, thank you.
Sure what he means.
Mr. Blackman, you'll be next to speak. Your mute's also on. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, board members. My name is Wes Blackman. I'm a professional urban planner, and I was hired by Bob and Sarah Jane Merrill. And Bob, I think, expressed his thoughts very clearly in his letter, and I don't want to be repetitive and say many of the things that he has already said in his letter concerning the Essex Court subdivision. I just want to let you know that
I'm so sorry, sir. It seems a connection issue. If you could repeat what you just said, we lost you.
Okay, let me try again.
Sure.
The Essex Court subdivision went before the Plan and Plats Review Committee in February, and it was beat up pretty badly. It had many comments, and many of them related to setbacks and ground coverage and width of rights of way and all the things that could be addressed if it magically turned into a plan. So it would be captured by the change in this ordinance, and they're concerned that this text change, as it's written now, would facilitate that project and be harmful to the neighborhood in which they live. And I just want to point out, as a professional planner, I can't agree that it complies with the amendment standards of section 9432 at this point. And I'd like to point out something that I don't know if staff even is aware of. If you go to the actual amendment language, attachment 5, There's a lot of flowery wording under the intent, which I'm not going to address, but I think some other people identified some weaknesses there, and that needs to be tightened up, I think. But if you look at A, of course, we're looking at waiving, or reducing or waiving a lot of important criterion. But then I'm concerned about B, allowing an increase in density and or floor area ratio as long as the limits do not exceed those allowed in the comprehensive plan future land use element policy 1.1.3. And if you go to that page, that's where the future land use designations are outlined. And I just found out about this late this morning. So excuse me for not, being as prepared as I would like to be, but this jumped out at me. And this is a major change. This is citywide. This is a zoning district. The planned development district is a zoning district. And it's a big deal. You're going from a minimum of 10 acres that a PUD has to be to 1. So you're broadening the horizon of possible properties that could be could avail themselves of this planned development relief. So you have to be aware of the implications of that. The 17 that were issued east of I-95, if you look at them, they make sense. They're downtown dense high-rise properties. That makes sense. But then when you look at these potentially underutilized or properties that could be redeveloped along Flagler Drive, I really have a problem with attachment 4, and that just identifies the 1 acre properties that aren't included in this ordinance. What we need to see are all the properties between 1.1 acres and 9.9 acres that could be redeveloped and could suddenly become planned developments. So if you go to the wording of the amendments, B, and go to that future land use element policy 1.1.3, the area south of Southern Boulevard, and correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but it has a future land use designation of single family, period, SF. And under the density unit gross acre, there's a range, and it's 7.26 to 13.4. So that means that you could have a lot smaller than the 6,000 minimum in the SF7 district as part of a subdivision. And then you go to C, well, also in the future land use element of the comp plan on 2 pages further, under the description for that same SF single family district, the single family SF designation is intended for parcels that are best suited for urban residential uses, single family residential, attached and detached, multifamily within a planned development, ranging in density from 7.26 to 13.4 dwelling units per acre. But as it's written now, someone could come in with a 2 acre project at the end of Essex Court and between Flagler Drive and the dead end there, and do a much denser project than what would be permitted by right under the SF7 zoning. So, and I would suggest going up and down Flagler Drive and looking for those lots between 1.1 and 9.9 acres. I'm not concerned about the 1 acre lots. You should be concerned about the door you're opening for all those lots in between 10 acres and 1 acre. So have a lot of concerns. Again, this is a big deal. It is not kind of in a special period here. We are meeting virtually. I think this should be vetted by the neighborhood associations. I think a lot of people would be interested in knowing about this, but maybe that's why we're doing it this way. So I will.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
We appreciate your comments. Ms. Pullen, you need to turn your mute off as well. It should be one of the corners there where you move your cursor. There you go.
Okay. Hi. Thank you very much. and thank you for this lovely experience. We're all adapting to
Yes.
our circumstances, and you've been most kind to include the public. A couple of things. One is that there hasn't been sufficient time for the public to understand this. There was one minuscule little advertisement put in the newspaper in the legal section a week ago Saturday. The agenda has yet to appear on the city website. And there's been no effort to do outreach to compensate. And I think people would feel more comfortable if they could kick the tires a little bit. And it's what someone presumes is developable is not necessarily all that is developable. One of the charts referenced a couple of parcels on South Flagler, but we do know that people knock buildings down every day, and for whatever their reasons are. So it's not intellectually correct to say, well, it's really going to only happen in these two little spots. I think people are concerned that they haven't been able to kick the tires and look at the various scenarios, like Mr. Blackman said. We have several parcels that right now, an unethical realtor has multiple real estate signs for sale on a very large parcel on South Flagler residential that has not even been subdivided. So it's important to realize there are all kinds of forces at work. And to not engage the very people who are going to deal with this and live with whatever the results are, I think is kind of a misstep. So what I would like to do is say, hey, I applaud the city trying to tighten up, clean up the acreage piece. But as I believe Mr. Blackman said, when you have you amass a large parcel, and as we know, as I said, houses are getting knocked down every day. You amass a large parcel, you come in for a PD, you get setbacks waived, you get this waived, that waived, the other waived, or excused or relaxed, or whatever you want to call it. You end up with more houses crunched together, condos, houses, whatever. So there are different scenarios that would play out. I know there's a strip in the North End, for example, and I'm not sure the people up there are even aware of this, where a commercial group has bought up a large number of houses in a non-historic area. And that would be ripe to rip them all down and build like zero lot line practically, because you could get little narrow setbacks. Areas that are not historic, everything's up for grabs. So I guess what I'm saying is the fears may be worse than the disease, but couldn't we, because this has been in existence for years and years and years, couldn't we pause and have a couple of community opportunities or a workshop that people could join by Zoom, properly notify all of the stakeholders, meaning property owners, residents of the city, so that questions could be submitted and fears allayed if indeed they are not justified. But to run this through right now, it was originally on the March agenda, and I have found it in the legal ad, asked for the background information. The response that I got was, we're taking it off the agenda. So it didn't show up in April, showed up in May. I immediately, the Monday after I found the ad, asked for additional information, and I did not get it. And then I got it only because someone else asked for it, and it was sent this past Thursday. I'm concerned about unintended consequences. We've had this problem for a while. I'm not sure that the fix is in, and I'm asking if we could plan a workshop provide more public outreach so that we don't get into what the mayor doesn't want, none of us want, to have a battle in a public meeting. Let's get people properly informed, and if they can kind of agree, then we're ahead of the game. So that's
Thank you,
my-
Ms. Palmer. We appreciate your comments. And at this point, I'd like to give staff the opportunity to respond to any of the comments they heard before we bring them back to the board for discussion and vote. So Ms. Van or Mr. Green, either of you or both of you, do you wish to respond to anything you've heard?
Well, I don't know if Angela's going to speak, but in reference to Mr. Blackman's comments, I'll mention that we are not proposing any changes to that subsection 1B. That's what exists in the code today. We are not proposing any changes to density. We have an inconsistency of our minimum residential plan development acreage. It's been 10 acres in one section, 2 acres in another. We've lived with that inconsistency for many, many years. We've taken the more conservative approach, and every time we bring a project before the planning board and commission, we always use the 10 acres, but in actuality, we've had an inconsistency. So we're trying to rectify that inconsistency. A lot of discussion on the Essex Court subdivision. That's a separate project that really has no bearing on what we're discussing tonight. The same with 3907 South Flagler. That case has been before this board and the city commission. It was denied. We're in litigation now. If this application and this amendment had been in place, they could not move forward because they were less than the 1 acre minimum requirement of the plan development. The bottom line is you're not going to find any large 10 acre parcels east of I-95. Most of the city, if not all of the city, is really going to be redevelopment, and that's not a bad thing. But hopefully we're going to see older buildings, vacant lots that are certainly less than 10 acres are going to be redeveloped. And again, we're trying to eliminate this inconsistency. Developers will still have to comply with the requirements of the plan development. I don't think we've ever approved a large high-rise plan development single family. So that's just the fear that's being promoted to shoot this amendment down, but it's just not going to happen in a single family district. But Angela, I don't know if there's anything else you want to mention.
I know, I think you basically said everything again. It's just the fact that I think everybody's, when they're reading the staff report, they understand what we were changing. We're not changing the ability for somebody today to come in and buy up lots in a single family neighborhood and rezone it to a PD. They can do that today. We're not changing anything like that. We wouldn't support that and approve that, but we're not changing anything. All we're doing is clarifying the one part of the language and putting the and getting rid of the contradiction in the code. And that's basically it. You can still come in today, commission can come in and commission can waive it down to point, like we have a project on North Flagler, which is 0.96 acres that the commission approved years ago. And based before this text amendment, they still can come in and they can do that. So.
All right, does anyone, board member, have a question of staff before we bring it to ourselves for discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Specifically about the the amendment to the traffic requirements. I was just wondering, I saw the note in there about how there was a project that had a net increase of 1 vehicle trip requiring the applicant to get the city commission approval of the change, and the determination the language was onerous. And so I credit staff for that, for recognizing that issue and seeking to resolve it, because I do think there are things we can do certainly to make things more user friendly for developers in a positive way for everybody. But I was wondering, could someone give me a little background about how you actually came up with the replacement, the 3% of average daily traffic or 100 ADT trips over traffic for the original project was established? How was that standard developed? Why is that the use opposed to something less or something more?
That was a formula worked out between our traffic planner and the city's traffic engineer based on what the 1% and what, again, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't know the correct terminology, but based on what the average daily trips increase would be on a particular road, not provide an impact on it. So they basically worked out the formula based on the 3% average daily trip or 100 AD trips. And that was basically worked out with them and doing the analysis that they did. Because they the one came up with the language that we placed within here.
That answer your question, Scott?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Go ahead, Todd.
So a lot of the testimony was about, or a lot of the questions from the public were about, potential for workshops or whether this had enough public notice and discussion before tonight, although we have great attendance for a Zoom meeting compared to last month. Does staff feel like we need to have workshops, or is there potential to do that between whatever happens here tonight and City Commission?
I mean, Rick can address this, but my whole thing is staff is what we're changing. We're not really impacting anything that basically changing what the commission can do today. We're basically restricting them than what they can do today. We're making them more restricted. They can't go below 1 acre. So that's why staff feel we're not changing anything that really would require workshops. But we can.
We'd be happy to have a discussion if anybody wants to have a discussion. We'd like to move forward with the planning board tonight. We will have 2 hearings in front of the city commission. We'll be happy to have a meeting, answer questions between tonight and the city commission meeting if that's the desire of the residents. At the end of the day, I think there's going to be a push by some residents to keep it at 10 acres. So in that respect, I don't know how much progress we're going to make. I think this is a fairly simple change, but we'll be happy to do that.
I had a question for both Rick and Angela. I recognize the fact, Angela's argument that, look, regardless of what the requirement is, the reality has been, with almost no exception, any legitimate project that's come through that's been less than 10 acres has been adopted by the commission. My question to you as staff is, are you giving up some of your bargaining position when you're dealing with a potential developer to have that 10-acre requirement so you can maybe end up with a better project, maybe one a little less dense, maybe one more to the planning board, the planning department's liking, because you had the weight of a 10-acre requirement? That if we give up and we start now at 1 acre, will it impact our ability to get a better project when developers come in?
Well, twofold. I don't think so. If you read the code section, there's certain things, requirements they had to meet for the 10-acre waiver. I mean, it's separate from setback waivers. It was separate. That's in the code that they had findings. And again, I think what a PD gives to staff and gives city the ability to work and come in and work with them and try to get certain things that are benefit to the citizens, because they're coming in regardless of the 10 acres, they're asking for something. Outside of the 10-acre requirement, they're asking for other things. So I think us making the language a little more less ambiguous, we're giving us the authority to say, listen, guys, you got to do A, B, C, D, and E. This is what a PD requiring to do. Because a lot of times we're going back and forth because our language was so vague.
Right.
Now we're saying,
so you don't think it's going to hurt your ability?
No, I do not.
Okay, that was my question.
No.
All right, are there any other questions of staff? And if not, we'll bring it to the board for discussion. So what are your thoughts, people? Let me start. I'm going to, it's like Hollywood Squares. I'll start with you, Peter.
What's the question?
What are your thoughts on the proposal?
Hollywood Square.
On the code.
I don't think that lot area reduction will be the driving force for redevelopment. I think staff will always review any size of lot on its merits. We have in the past approved lots that are less than 10 acres. And frankly, a PD to me always yields a superior site development. It's always a win-win.
All right, thank you. Andre, any thoughts?
I do understand their perspective of maybe why they're a little hesitant or reluctant to not let this go to a vote for support of this. I don't think that it's a ploy to circumvent the public, but I do see that if we were to have this meeting in the old normal, and we had a turnout, which I would imagine that this probably would have had a pretty large turnout in the past. I would probably, I would think that we would probably table this, and because there isn't as much public involvement in this meeting here today, and maybe for the next couple months, that if is there a rush to get this done now? Is there, why not, have a couple of these workshops, do some outreach to other, HOAs and everything, and let this kind of go through a filter and, make everybody comfortable. But I don't think that this is a way or ruse to, these times to get this to slide. So that's all I really have to say.
Thank you, Andre. Christopher.
Yeah, picking up on Andre's point, I mean, I'm very sympathetic with the staff's desire to, move something through that's going to improve their ability to serve the city. And I believe their hearts are pure, and I believe they're doing this for the good of the city. And so I don't agree with some of the comments from some of the people who went to the effort to come and see us that they're trying to pull a fast one on anybody. I do sort of like the idea that I thought I heard developing from Andres, which where we, this is a multi-step process, as Rick had mentioned. There's going to be more public review, and so if staff had time to meet with more members of the community to better prepare for the next meeting, or to assuage concerns that the community has, I'd like to strike a balance between keeping the development of this city moving, because I think it's such a critical priority, and also being sensitive to public concerns. So that's the balance I think we should try and strike.
Thank you. Forgive me, Todd?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Todd, I haven't called on you yet, correct?
Yeah, I think that this issue has come up on many projects in the past, and I can't recall a single one where the request to waive the area down was recommended for denial by our board. And the testimony has unanimously always been from the staff as well as the applicants that the benefits of the plan developments can be achieved in less than 10 acres. And it was a kind of an outdated acreage requirement for a city that's now basically dealing with infill and redevelopment projects. I mean, it does sound, based on the number of people that turned out tonight and all, that there may be some benefit from increased public outreach. But it also sounds to me like there's potential to do that between now and whenever this item were to go to the city commission.
All right, thank you. Scott, and your mute's on, sir.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I think I agree. I just want to echo the sentiments of Andres and Chris, that I don't think there's anything untoward going on here. I don't think there's a bait and switch or trying to pull a fast one on anybody by staff. And I think that staff's efforts here are largely creditable, because I do think it's a good idea. I'm very much in favor of, wherever we can, codifying things and taking away ambiguity from the code, to make it more accessible and understandable for everybody. But I was really, I've been really moved by two things. One was the testimony of Mr. Blackman, specifically talking about referring to the properties that were included as an attachment to the packet this week for this meeting. But talking about how the bigger question would be, or the more important information would be, the properties that fall between 1 acre and 9.99 acres. Because I think that, by waiving this 10-acre requirement and taking it down to the 1 acre, I think that is something that I think that would be good information to have that we don't have before us now. And then also, I think, just the general feeling that I have from the fact that we have so many people who have either come to today to make a comment at this Zoom meeting or submitted the comment. I don't think it's right for us to go forward with this at this time. I think that more public comment, to echo some of my colleagues' comments, is absolutely crucial to bring. I think it's important to bring people in, but I think it's really important to bring people in now at this early part of the process, because if we pass this tonight, to have the public comment between now and the city commission meeting, well, now this amendment already has the seal of approval of the planning board, and that has weight with the city commission, and that puts the public on a very different, and the amendment on very different footing than it would if public comment, if a workshop was had before the planning board ultimately decided on the amendment. So I think it would just, I haven't heard anything that indicates any rush or immediate need for this to happen right now. I think the fact that it was on the March agenda and then pulled from the March agenda would indicate that we could pull this now and table this, let a little time pass, get some more public comment, let more of the public know about what's going on as things get back to normal life in the city in general, and then after having a fully informed discussion about it by the public, then bring this back and move forward.
All right, thank you, Scott. Deborah, and your mute's on, Deborah.
Thank you. I do applaud the staff for modifying the language for clarity for plan developments. This would be most beneficial to the developers. But listening to the comments tonight, like the previous board members have said, I do think we need to provide a little bit more opportunity for public input. I know that these issues have come before the planning board before, and they've been approved, but in this case, since the language is being modified, and of course, I do not believe that there's any kind of intent to blindside the public. So I think we could actually take some time and table it so that we can get more input from the public, and therefore it'll be a kind of balance between the city and the public as we move this forward.
Thank you, Deborah. My own thoughts echo much of what we've heard, and I agree very much with what Chris said. We're trying to find that right balance. We all agree that what the city's attempt to do, the staff's attempt to do, is in the right direction. Whether they've done it the right way, we can discuss, but their hearts are in the right place and we're moving in the right direction. There's also a very legitimate concern about sufficient public input. And the real question becomes, as Chris said, trying to find the balance. Do we do that outreach between this vote and the first city commission vote, or do we do that outreach before it goes to city commission? I've heard good arguments on both sides. I think that's going to be the key question. Let me ask by a show of hands for those board members, which of you would prefer to table this matter for another month as opposed to allowing it to proceed to the city commission with the instruction to the staff that we want outreach during that intervening time? So my question is a show of hands, how many would like to delay consideration of this motion until the next meeting? I say Andre, Scott, anyone else? Deborah, did you understand my question? Because I think you're on their side on this. My question was, I'm asking for a show of hands of those who would like to delay.
I clicked my raise. Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't see your hand. That's all. So that's 1, 2, 3. And Chris, where are you falling on this line? Your mute's on, my friend, so we can't hear you.
I didn't raise my hand on purpose. I would support the staff, although I would urge them to seek more communication with the public prior.
Right, and Peter, I think that's where you come down as well. Mm-hmm. Todd, where do you come down on this? The narrow question being, we're all in agreement this thing deserves to go forward at some point based on what we've heard. We're all in agreement that more public comment would be beneficial. The narrow question is, do we want that public comment to occur before or after we take our initial vote? And where do you come down on that?
Yeah, I think either is beneficial, but my preference would be to go ahead and move this ahead tonight. allow it between tonight and the city commission.
Okay, so I'm counting 3 for delay and 3 for moving it forward. So I'm the deciding vote.
Oh.
Oh, so Mr. Green, reassure me, if we were to go forward with this, how comfortable can we be that there's going to be meaningful public input between now and the first city commission meeting?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, certainly if it helps the concern of the board, we won't schedule the item before the city commission until we've had the public hearing or the public discussion with the residents. So we will strive to have that meeting first before we even schedule it, and get whatever input is desired. I mean, I think a lot of it is clarification, because with some of the letters I heard earlier tonight, there seems to be a misunderstanding, and maybe some of the residents were given bad information, because some of the things that we are not attempting to do were conveyed in those letters to the board. But we certainly can have that meeting as quickly as we can.
Well, what about Scott's point when he said, is there real urgency on this thing? You know, we understand you've been living with this for so many years.
Yeah.
Would there really be a harm in delaying it a month?
I'll take responsibility for pushing Angela, because the board members are going to see a whole lot of items coming before you over the next 3 months. So part of our effort was to try to get this done now so we can focus on the many cases that you're going to be seeing.
You know how to scare us.
Well, I'm sorry, but we were hoping to do the code amendment for group and sober homes. We're making amendments to our sign code as well. We've got other development projects that are coming forward as well. So I just didn't want to inundate the board and have, 7 or 8 items on an agenda that would keep you here till midnight.
Yeah. You know what strikes me? Yeah. You know what strikes me is how actually very close this board is. But it's right on the edge between some tilting one way and some tilting the other way. But we're all very close. We all want the same things here. Mm-hmm. I think for myself, with the assurance that there's going to be meaningful outreach and that this will not be requested to go to the city commission before that outreach is made. And if that's part of the motion that we request and instruct, to the extent we're allowed to, Mr. Thomas, if we're allowed to, you to help me understand what the extent we're allowed to do here, but to make the request or make the instruction, however we're permitted, that this outreach occur, I think I'd be comfortable going forward on that basis, knowing it's going to be an ongoing dialogue. I'm not sure what more we as a board can contribute than what we can do here tonight and moving the process forward. We'll only make recommendations, and the recommendation that I'm envisioning is to allow this process to go forward, but with the recommendation that more public comment is urgently needed and public input. So that's where, if I'm the deciding vote here, having heard from the 6 of you earlier, that's where I would come down. So I guess I would look for a motion that represents the majority view.
I'll move a motion, Mr. Chairman. I move approval of Planning Board Case 2001 with the proviso that we request staff to conduct outreach with the public and seek input prior to the next commission meeting.
Are we a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would like to
Please go ahead,
maybe
Andre.
provide some advice, at least with the community outreach, is, to a layman. I think the reading of the code change, that's all well and good, but I think that if you're dealing with the public, you've got to do more graphic presentation to really convey this and show them this is what's going to be doing, what we're trying to pass, so that it's very transparent that, okay, this is what it was before and this is what it is going to be. That way they say, oh, okay, well, there really is no change. I think that will help, make the pill a little easier to swallow. But I want to say I support this, but I think that it's more important to give this just one more month and let's let the community be educated as to what's happening. And 1 month is really nothing in development schedules for progress of the city. So that's my only other comment.
Thank you. I certainly agree with your first suggestion as well. Any other comments? Any other discussion before we call the vote from the board members? And Ms. White, I think since we may have a divided vote here, if you don't mind, I ask you to do a roll call for the vote. So we have a motion and a second, and Ms. White will do a roll call as to the vote.
Scott Holtz,
No.
Christopher Chase,
Aye, yes.
Andre Sparadello,
No.
Deborah Rain,
No.
Peter Pivko,
Yes.
Todd McLeod,
Aye.
Stephen Mans.
Yes.
Five to two vote.
I think it's 4 to
4 to
3.
3. 4 to 3.
But I like your thinking. Hope we can make it look better. Okay, 4 to 3. Because we had the no's were Deborah, Andre, and Scott. And the 4 yeses were Peter, myself, Todd, and Chris. Okay? All right. Thank you, everyone. We now move. We had co-revision case 2002 that's been moved. So we now move to other business, unfinished business, new business. Quick question, Mr. Green. Best estimate as to, at this point, when do you think we'll have live meetings, or is it just too fluid?
Oh, boy. We have a Zoom meeting with the mayor every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Our last one was Monday yesterday, and there's no discussion at this point as to when we're City Hall and go back to what we call normal. So I don't want to even hazard a guess.
No need. I was just curious if there was any thinking you could share with the board.
No.
All right.
No.
If there's nothing else, we will stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Be safe.
Bye-bye.